After the first installment, Naughty Dog said, "You haven't seen The Last of Us." I'm sorry about that. I thought of it, and I couldn't not put it into the video, so I'll just get on with it. I wanted to talk about The Last of Us Numero Dos. It's very contentious, so I just want to say up front, if you listen to my opinion and disagree, that's fine. You don't need to be upset. It's just a video game. You will be okay. Unless you're one of the people who I will be talking about shortly. Another thing, I didn't actually play the game. I don't own a PS4. I was actually just going to wait for it to get put on PS Now in a few years, but trying to avoid spoilers was just getting way too frustrating, so I caved, and I watched like a cutscene movie on YouTube that edited all the cutscenes together along with all the gameplay segments that had irrelevant story bits. So I will give some quick spoiler-free thoughts, and then I'll dive into some spoilers. I liked it. I don't know if that's going to be a controversial take. I mean it will, considering the online discourse, but I don't know if that's a controversial take with like the general audience. But I don't know. I don't think it's quite as good as the first installment, but I thought it was pretty great and definitely a worthy sequel. Whereas the first Last of Us was about hope and finding something to fight for, the second Last of Us is about revenge and getting so caught up in wanting vengeance that you lose yourself. And I think it's really well done. The story in this game is ballsy, unrelenting. It's an emotional roller coaster that will shock you, disturb you, and challenge you to try and see what they are going for with this game. The game looks gorgeous. The motion captured performances are really good. Again, I'm not really sure how much of it is like the voice actors performing and how much of it is the animation, but either way, like the end product is really good. And the score is fantastic as well. The most notable thing, however, about the game is, as I mentioned before, just how ballsy it is. They do certain things with this sequel that have made a lot of people upset, but even if these decisions don't work for you personally, hopefully you can still appreciate that we got such a risky story like this from one of the biggest AAA publishers. And in talking about it not working for some people, I do want to touch on the backlash. If you don't like the game because one of the female characters is too muscular, or because you think that Naughty Dog is trying to push a quote-unquote agenda, then you're an idiot and you can stay molding. However, not everyone who didn't like the game falls into that category, and I don't think it's fair to lump everyone into that category. There are a ton of people who just simply didn't like the game. The story just didn't work for them, and that's totally cool. I mean, you might still be an idiot, but it's not because you didn't like The Last of Us Part 2. I think I'll jump into spoilers now. So, if you haven't played it or watched someone else play it like I did, then I highly recommend it. Even if you've read or seen some of the spoilers and they've turned you off, I still recommend judging the game itself. I recommend seeing everything in context, because I don't know. I don't think that looking at the spoilers on their own is really accurately paints the picture of what they're trying to do with this game. Okay, are you gone? I think they're gone. So Joel died. This is obviously the most contentious, well, actually the second most contentious decision Naughty Dog made with this game. And this was actually spoiled for me beforehand, but I didn't realize that it would happen that early on. I figured that it would happen near the end of the game, maybe around the middle. And the thing is that I also read that Dina was gonna die as well, which just turned out to be a lie. So I went into the game thinking that Dina was gonna be murdered and that the game would be Joel and Ellie going to get justice for Dina. That's like what I went into the game thinking it was going to be. However, I'm totally cool with the way that they did it. I've seen some people say that it is disrespectful to the character to have him die that early on, and that it was just done for shock value, but I completely disagree. First of all, I don't think that stories should exist to serve characters because they're popular. I think that characters should exist to serve the story being told. And if Naughty Dog wanted to tell a revenge story, then having Joel be killed is undoubtedly the most effective way that they could have done it. And it wasn't just done to shock you. The death of Joel is the catalyst that pushes the story forward, and it being Joel allows for us to hate Abby at first, but then reflect on that last mission of the first game. The game doesn't disrespect Joel at all, in my opinion. It only highlights how flawed he was, but the game still does plenty to remind us why he is a flawed but still lovable character that we can, empathize with. But listen, I get it. You guys were expecting another game where Joel and Ellie are going on an adventure. I was expecting that game as well. And seeing him die was genuinely really hard for me to watch, but Naughty Dog decided to take a risk and go in another direction. So, let us segue to that other direction. Most of the game takes place over the course of 4 days, and it follows Ellie for the first half, and then follows Abby, the woman who killed Joel, for the second half over the course of the same 4 days. And for a lot of people, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Not only do they kill Joel in a horrifying manner, but then they force you to play as the person who killed Joel. Listen, I get it. I totally get why people were angered by this. I was angered by it as well. But in my opinion, I thought it turned out to be a brilliant decision. Not only does the game have a new character brutally kill one of the most beloved video game characters of all time, but they then attempt to show you that she's not a terrible person, and the game gets you to understand why she did it. And I personally couldn't help but sympathize with her. I mean, yeah, like my first reaction was, really? You're gonna make me follow her point of view? But yeah, then I remembered that the decision that Joel made at the end of the first game was horrible and selfish. Of course, I understood and empathized with him, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't gun down Abby's dad with not even an ounce of hesitation because I was saving Ellie, but I can still recognize that it was a horrible thing to do. And as much as I love the character, it's not like Abby didn't have a good reason to want to come after him. And I've also heard people say that they should have shown Abby's flashback before having her kill Joel. And while I'm sure that would have made the scene easier to stomach, and it would have made people more easily, understand Abby, I also don't want to be babied as an audience member. I want stories to force me to look at challenging circumstances and then challenge my point of view. So, yeah, I personally thought the two things everyone hates the most were done really well. I also really loved how they handled Ellie. Obviously, her and Abby go on a similar path for revenge, and it causes them to lose everything. People talk about the cycle of revenge when it comes to this game. Violence begets violence. Seeing Ellie descend throughout the course of the game is depressing. And the last section of the game that everybody says, shouldn't have been there, that it was just kind of tacked on, I absolutely hated in the best way possible. I desperately wanted to see Ellie just let it go. Just let it go. Stay with your family. And she does let it go at the end. And even though I think it saved her as a person, her decision still caused her to lose her family in that process. And she ends up alone. And yeah, it is a tragic ending, and it sucks for the character of Ellie, but it just speaks to the theme of the game, right? How revenge and the cycle of violence causes you to lose yourself and lose everything that you have, and lose all the people around you. And by the end of the game, when Ellie is still going after Abby, it actually made me be more on Abby's side. Abby actually undergoes a similar arc to Joel's in the first game. She was consumed by tragedy, and it basically ruined her her life. But having to protect a child not only gives her a different outlook on the world, right? It kind of takes her out of the mentality of I am a soldier and these people are the enemy, right? But it also causes her to let go of her desire for revenge. The game successfully took Joel's killer, humanized her, let us see her point of view, and had me side with her instead of Ellie. That is an impressive feat, and I get that not everyone feels this way, but I can only speak for myself and my experience with the game. And people are also saying that this game villainizes Joel and Ellie, but I don't really agree with that. I mean, Joel has always been a bad person. I think they made that pretty clear in the first game.
Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No. All this game does is show the perspective of someone that he's wronged. And like I mentioned before, I still think the game does a good job of showing us the good side of Joel and what made Joel such a likable character, but it also just reaffirms that, yeah, Joel did some messed up things. And I mean, neither Ellie nor Abby are villains. They're just victims of tragedy. They both do terrible things in their anger and end up losing everything as a result. So yeah, I personally really enjoyed the game. It wasn't the story that I was anticipating, but once I stopped mauling and I just took in the story that they were trying to tell, I found myself really appreciating it. Honestly, my only real complaints come from the process through which the game was made. I don't think the developers should have had to watch actual violent videos showcasing real world violence in order to make the violence in the game seem realistic. I think the game would have been just as impactful without the obsession with realism. And I know I didn't play the game, but stuff like Ellie needing to have like separate animations for her upgrades. You know, like, did an animator really have to go without seeing their family just so that the game could have that fancy animation? I mean, I don't know. I don't personally think so. And as far as other criticisms about the game, like, I think maybe the pacing was maybe a bit messy. I think it kind of got confusing at times with all the different time jumps, but honestly, nothing major. I genuinely really like the game. But either way, if you disagree with anything that I've talked about in this video, I encourage you to let me know why in the comments down below. I only ask that you be respectful. Goodbye.